the San Francisco 49ers have granted Deebo Samuel permission to seek a trade. I know he's getting up there in age a little bit. I immediately thought I would take Deebo on my team, and I thought, maybe I was just thinking that because anytime I hear somebody's available, I think the Browns should go pick him up. But then Dan Orlovsky goes on one of the shows he's on ESPN and said if he was one of these teams, he would be inquiring about Deebo and he would be interested in adding Deebo to the team. We were one of those teams. So I guess I just wanted to throw it to you guys. Do you think it makes sense to trade for Deebo? Do you think he'd fit in on this team? What's that? Is that something you'd be interested in? You can go first, Justin.
Okay. The last that I read about this was that people are expecting him to be a post-June 1st cut. That's what we're thinking. As far as like Deebo, I like his energy. I think he's a great locker room kind of guy. Like, he's kind of like that dog. He kind of gives me Jarvis Landry kind of vibes. Obviously production's been down like the last couple of years. He signed a huge contract in 2021, I think, 70 something million over 3 years. Production has dipped. And, he missed a couple games last year. It's tough because, he's going to probably want to get paid. So I guess if the price is right, do I think he could be a good fit? I think he adds a lot of potential, if he can stay healthy. We'll go ahead.
Go, Josh.
I was just going to say, you're right about the age, 29 years old. So getting up there in terms of receiver, especially the way he plays, because he's a very physical, kind of almost like a wide receiver or a running back hybrid position, because the 49ers used him out of the backfield a ton. That was the big deal whenever he was trying to get that big contract was, hey, you guys are using me out of two positions here. I'm not just a receiver. I'm kind of like a backup running back for you guys. And you're right. Like the production he's been a good player throughout his career, but he's never been a high volume guy. I mean, the highest receptions he's ever had, 77, 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns was back in 2021. He did have 7 touchdowns back in 23 with 892 yards, but that was just the second highest, yardage output of his career. Last year, 51 catches, 670 yards, just 3 touchdowns receiving. I mean, if the price was right, I'd love to add him to the roster, but the price has to make sense. I don't want to overpay for a guy who's going to come in here and I don't want to say, put up limited numbers, but really his production has not been what you're paying top dollar for.
No, his mentioning the production, he had almost 1,800 all-purpose yards just in 2021. And since then, he's probably only around 2,000, 2,100 combined in the 3 years since then. So the production has definitely dipped. We've seen the emergence of Ayuk. They brought in CMC, who, he gets a big chunk of the offense now. I'm with you guys. If you can, I think he would fit in the locker room nicely in terms of I thought the exact same thing. I get Jarvis Landry vibes in terms of he'll hold people accountable, a toughness, a grittiness.
Yeah.
And that could be good for some of the young guys in the locker room to have somebody like that. But we can't give them some huge payday. It's got to make sense financially. And if they're going to post June 1st, cut him. What do you think the open market for him is? This is a guy coming off of 670 yards, 892 yards and 632 yards receiving the last 3 years. He's only eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving one time in his career. So they gave him that huge contract after his big season where he had 1,400 yards and 365 yards rushing. At least I'm pretty sure that's when it was. And then the very next year, he dipped down to 632 yards. And you started hearing, are they mad? They paid Deebo a year too early. That money should have went to Ayuk, and then it caused the Ayuk issues with holdouts and that kind of stuff. At least maybe my timeline is off, but I feel like that's how it went. Maybe if somebody's double checking me here.
He signed a big contract in 2021, same year he had that huge season.
And then since then, it's almost been like they've had buyer's remorse a little bit with, he's played the year after the big season. He played 13 games. He played 15 and 15 the last 2 seasons. So he's had some injuries, but it's not like he's playing half the season or a quarter of the season. He's still playing the bulk of the games. At this point, I almost expect my corners and my wide receivers, they're going to miss 2 to 3 games. I'm just expecting that. If you play 14 plus games a year in today's NFL, you're considered you're not a liability in terms of injury,
right,
in my opinion.
That's like the new full season.
Yeah. So, no, I think he'd fit in well. I think it's just all about the money and getting them to buy in and come into this locker room and kind of taking on a leadership role like the way Jarvis did. And then I think it would be good. I think he would do a lot of the things that we were trying to get Elijah Moore to do, and Elijah Moore wasn't equipped to do those things. If you remember when we went and got Elijah Moore, everybody's saying he could be our Deebo, and that's how we were trying to use him, and he's just not that guy. Deebo is a guy that you can turn around and hand the ball off to, just throw a quick screen to him. So no, it'd be interesting, but again, it's about the financial fit.
Yeah, for me, another thing that I'm a little concerned with Deebo is, Justin, you probably remember this, better than I do, but last year during the fantasy football season, a lot of the talk was, what do you do with Deebo Samuel? Is he washed? Like, can he just not do it anymore? Remember, he had so many games where he just disappeared, didn't do anything. And that was kind of a big topic, at least in the fantasy community, that really sticks in my mind about Deebo Samuel. So I'm really hesitant to throw that guy too much money at all, especially coming off a season like that. And I was just kind of thinking of what receiver last year came off of, a questionable production season, is a little bit older and got a big payday, was Calvin Ridley with the Titans. And I was just looking up to see what they gave him. He was 28, 29 years old last year? I think 29.
Yeah.
And he got a 4-year, $92 million contract, and the annual average is $23 million. Like, I don't want to do that. That's way too much, in my opinion.
No, I will say a little bit with this production dipping is there's a lot of mouths to feed in San Francisco, especially with, they got CMC.
True, but they were all hurt this year. CMC was out and Ayuk was out all year.
Yeah, well, then now everybody can just double Deebo, So it's like one of those things where you're either the focal point where they know all we have to do is take you away, or you become, there's Ayuk, Kittle, CMC, the other back. They're always going to be like a run first team also. They don't throw the ball a ton. So I feel like I could play devil's advocate in terms of the production. I think he could come into Cleveland and put up better numbers than 670 yards receiving. But like you said, I'm not giving him a Calvin Ridley kind of contract to try to do that. He's going to get almost like a prove-it deal from me.
And not to like crap on Cleveland, the city, or the Browns, but let's say he goes post June 1st and he's a free agent technically. What percentage would you say he decides, I don't want to go to Buffalo or Kansas City or any of these potential contenders, or, teams over 500 or teams that can score more than 20 points? What do you think the chance that he would be like, forget those teams, I'm coming to the Buckeye State?
Yeah, it's going to be low percentage.
I would say this: if you think he can help your football team, you can't let him get cut. You'd have to trade for him, because like you said, there's zero chance he would be coming here in free agency. I think the Browns' best weapon, I guess, and some people say they have to overpay to get people here. Well, we're not a destination city. We're not a vacation city. Sometimes you got to pay to get people here. But then I think we have some of the nicer facilities in terms of our in Berea. I think I know that a lot of people shit on this front office, but I feel like once we get people here, we've done a pretty good job of being able to keep them and make them enjoy it here. Like Njoku asked for a trade and now he loves Cleveland. Jarvis Landry seemed to really enjoy his time here. Like, it's like we have to pay a little extra to get you here. But then once you get here, you realize, it's like you look around, you're like, oh, this isn't as bad as what everybody told me it was going to be. Like Donovan Mitchell, I know different sport, but Donovan Mitchell could have left Cleveland to go to New York and instead signed a contract to stay in Cleveland. It's one of those places where all you hear is people crap on Cleveland, and then you get to Cleveland and you're like, this isn't that bad. There's things to do here. This is fun. Turns out I'm rich, so if I really want to go do something, I can jump in a plane and go do it. I only have to live here for 6 months out of the year anyways. So I don't want people to think like, oh, if he doesn't want to be here, then you don't want to trade for him. I think if you could trade for him and get him in the building, and then you can make him see like, oh, okay, we're not a dumpster fire. We have things to offer. This is a good place to work, essentially. So I don't think we would have to holding them hostage. I just think you might have to pay to get him here to show him the light, if that makes sense.
Fair argument.
What would you give up for? What would you give up for him?
Mm. It's a good question, man. For me, it just depends on what we do in free agency and then what we do in the draft, because like you said, it's going to be a post June 1st deal anyway. So I don't know. It's tough because I don't even know what all draft picks we have next year to offer up for players.
I was off the top of my head, I just thought a fourth.
What about like Greg Newsome? I've been seeing a lot of those rumors again.
I just don't know if I'm trading a young corner who plays pretty well for an aging, possibly declining. I'd be more interested in giving up a mid-round draft pick. The hit rate on your mid-round draft picks are not as high. So I'd rather part ways with one of them than giving up a corner that we know can play at a pretty high level and who's younger.
I totally understand. I know that the conversations we'll have the conversations too as we get closer to free agency and all that stuff about Newsome, because this is the last year. So, are they going to extend him long term, or is this going to be it? I don't know what he's going to warrant in terms of a contract extension, but what do you think, Justin?
I'd even flip it and say, I think the Browns need to decide what they want to do with Elijah Moore. He's a free agent. Like, are you bringing him back? Because if you are, then I think it makes things a little interesting. But I mean, like, if you're not going to bring him back, that could be a great piece to bring in.
We don't have a whole lot of receivers on the roster right now. We're going to have to do stuff in free agency and the draft, because it's Judy, it's Tillman, and then it's Bell and Thrash and Michael Woods. And that's your wide receiver core.
No, we need help at wide receiver, especially if Elijah Moore doesn't come back. I think we're all on the boat of, if we get decent quarterback play, our wide receiver core can be solid. But I could also make you the argument, Jerry Jeudy aside, we don't really have a difference maker out there at the wide receiver position. And even Jerry Jeudy, I guess maybe it's just the skeptic Browns fan in me. I need to see it again now before I really start to buy into the number one hype. Sometimes it's like the guy who averages 25 points a game on the basketball team that only won 18 games the year before. Well, somebody's got to score. One of the receivers had to catch passes and run around, So I'm not saying that it's like a knock on Jerry Jeudy. I just want to see him stack good seasons before I really start to buy into the hype.
Dude, Devontae Parker was the name that I heard somebody compare it to the other day, who in his fifth year, remember, he was a first round pick and he was 494, 744, 670, 309 his first 4 years. And everyone's like, this guy's a bust. He's never going to pan out. Then his fifth year, he broke out 72 catches, 1,200 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And then he never did it again. So I'm with you. I love Jerry Jeudy. I think what he did was awesome. But, I'm not ready to crown anybody. I need to see it repeated.
Unfortunately, too, I think that, I saw flashes with Tillman where I was like, I think we have something special here. And unfortunately, that concussion it removed him from the season.
Yeah.
I know he eventually kind of got back out there, but it was late. Like the wheels were gone. You know what I mean? We were riding rim down the road at that point. So, I still think that there's potential there with Tillman too. I like Tillman a lot.